Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was sent to another realm by a goddess. To save an entire world from a madman, one goddess has given the Kages a means to send Naruto to another realm. Will Naruto be able to discover Kushina's divine identity, and can he survive the challenges of being her son? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 1. Disclaimer: I haven't done one these in a while, but none of this is mine as you all have the intelligence to figure out just by getting here. Tsunade was surprised to find herself standing in a void. She knew that she had gone to bed a few minutes ago, so this couldn't be real. Was she having a weird dream, or had Madara somehow infiltrated Konoha and placed her under a genjutsu? She instantly tried to cancel the supposed genjutsu, but nothing happened. Either she was in a strange dream, or she was under one very powerful illusion. The Hokage quickly looked around trying to find something that made sense in this void. She soon spotted 4 shadowy figures and decided to walk closer to them. It's not like she had a better alternative. After walking for what seemed like hours or minutes as time made no sense in this realm, the figures became clear and Tsunade found herself looking the other Kages. Gaara was the first to speak. This isn't an ordinary dream. He said it with such certainty that none of the assembled Kages would disagree with him. Gaara then continued, I take it that all of you tested this place to see if it was an illusion and couldn't break out as well? Do any of you know of any jutsu that allows someone to communicate with others in dreams? Before any of the other Kages could respond, a 6th figure appeared. This figure was cloaked in shadows, but the gathered shinobi could see that it was a woman. That put them slightly at ease as none of them figured that Madara would try to trick them by pretending to be a woman. A person of his power and ego wouldn't pretend if he had somehow trapped their minds in this void. Although cloaked in shadows, the unknown woman had a regal demeanor and projected an aura of power. Be at ease, Kages, the woman said with authority. I mean you no harm summoning your spirits here. In fact, I have come to help you with your upcoming war. Ei quickly spoke up, just how the hell do you hope to help us? Furthermore, why should we trust what you say? We don't know who you are and this is not a normal meeting. A massive wave of killing intent flooded the void directed at Ei. The powerful Raikage was reduced to a quivering mass of terror in seconds. Were it not for certain circumstances, I would destroy your mind and leave your body to waste away. Mere mortals like you have no right to speak to their betters, and I have killed many for questioning me in that manner. Believe this foolish mortal, I would gladly kill you and all of Kumo for the insults you and people have given to me if the kami of this realm would permit it. Luckily for you, the kami you worship would cause me too many hassles if I whipped Kumo out of existence, and I have a use for you. The shadowy figure then gave Ei one last glare that gave him a vision of 1,000 gruesome deaths. Trying to keep things from escalating out of control, Mei spoke up. Milady, would you be so gracious to tell us your name? Any help you can offer us would be truly appreciated. Mei didn't like speaking in a courtly manner. In fact, no ninja leader had ever liked dealing with the courtly customs of the nobility. However, they all knew how to use it when necessary, and Mei was especially skilled when it came to placating nobles. Every fiber of the Mizukage's body was screaming that this figure was a strong-willed and powerful noble that needed to be treated with the utmost care and respect. With a commanding tone, the shadowy woman spoke. None of you are worthy of knowing who I truly am. However, some of you do know a shadow of me. Under this aspect, I will permit you to address me. There was a blinding flash of light that forced all the Kages to close their eyes. After a few seconds, the light faded and everyone felt lighter, as if a massive weight they hadn't realized they had been carrying was removed. A softer and friendlier voice spoke up, There, you guys can open your eyes now. Suanda opened her eyes and her jaw immediately fell as far as it physically could go. She blinked her eyes trying to see if they were deceiving her. Despite what Tsunade thought would happen, the woman before her did not change. Nervously and in shock, the Hokage said, Kushina? Kushina Uzumaki nodded her head and cheerfully replied, it's me Busta-chan. Tsunade scowled when she heard Kushina unique nickname for her, and the other Kages tried to keep their giggles from escaping. Kushina looked a bit sheepish and scratched the back of her head. I'm sorry for how you all were strong-armed into coming here like this. When I'm the dreamer I have a lot less patience for mortals, especially when they might cause problems for things I deeply care about. Kumo's previous dumbass stunts just shortened my dreamer's fuse even more than normal. Oanoki glanced at EI and said, don't worry. He shortens everyone's fuse, so I can't blame you for that. However, I do wish to know how you're speaking to us. After all, you are dead. He didn't want to bring up that bit about the dreamer, because it made no sense to the old Kage. Minato's feared wife glanced at all of the Kages, and then began to explain things. You all must understand a few things. First, there are many realms to existence. Think of it like the elemental nations or one country among many, with it being almost impossible to enter another country. Each realm is under the control and guidance of a group of deities. The realm you all live in is under the control of the kami, and they typically influence things by periodically incarnating themselves as mortals. Sometimes their avatars are well known and have massive influence on the land. For instance, Hirashirama Senju was an avatar of the goddess Benzaiten. At other times they have almost no influence on the course of events, living simple lives like Susanoo is currently doing as a certain ramen chief. The reason I am telling you all this is because I am something close to an avatar. However, the goddess that I am a part of is not a kami. She is part of another group of deities known as the Olympians who rule another world. I won't go into the specifics, but one day she got so furious over something that she accidentally sent part of her essence into this realm where it was incarnated as me, Kushina Uzumaki. Gaara spoke up, are you some sort of divine Kage Bunshin then? That was what came to his mind given what she had told him. Besides, Gaara figured it would rather ironic given how much Naruto used that jutsu. Something about the women brought his blonde knucklehead friend to Gaara's mind. If those two weren't related to each other in some way, he was a monkey's uncle. Kushina smiled at her son's friend. Both yes and no, Gaara. I am both connected and separate from my dreamer. She is all that I am, but I am not all that she is. When she dreams she becomes me, and when she awakens I return to her. I am not a mere role that she takes on, but I am not a separate personality or person either. All you need to know is that both her and I are committed to seeing her son Naruto protected. Tsunade frowned when she heard Kushina say that. What do you mean by her son, Kushina? Are you speaking about the two of you being one and the same or something different? Part of Tsunade was still having trouble accepting that the little Brett she occasionally babysat was connected to a goddess. With a wince, Kushina spoke in a pained tone. You never realized something given that Mito already had your father and aunts before she sealed the Kyuubi into herself, Tsunade. All female Jinchuriki are sterile due to the nature of the Biju's churka. Male Jinchuriki don't have this problem due to the more dominating aspect of yang and male chakra, and the fact that male genitals are less connected to the churka network than female genitals. My dreamer stirred at my distress that I couldn't have any children and decided to help. She willed one of her eggs and a greater fraction of her essence into me so that Naruto could be born. Gods and goddesses don't have DNA, so Naruto's maternal DNA was copied directly from my own. My dreamer is in essence Naruto's primary mother, while I am his secondary mother. The reason why I am telling you all this is because my dreamer wishes to transport Naruto from your realm to hers. Under normal circumstances she would prefer for Naruto to stay in your realm. It is his home, and life for half-bloods is not any easier than the life of a ninja. However, Madara's interest in Naruto, and the importance of keeping Naruto out of Madara's hands have changed her mind. You all want to send Naruto to a distant island to avoid detection. She can send him to her realm where Madara cannot reach him. To do this, my dreamer has created a jutsu that will allow the five of you with her help to send Naruto to her realm. While she could do this without your help, it would be extremely noticeable, and my dreamer would like Naruto's transportation to be low-key. Now you five do need to know a few things before you agree to use this jutsu. First, time does not flow evenly between realms or even at the same rate over time. Temporal stress will destroy everything trying to move between realms that is not divine or has a firm grounding in both realms. As such, Naruto is the only one who will be able to be safely transported between realms even with this jutsu. My dreamer can and will be the grounding in that realm for the first transportation as he is of her essence. However, that will only work once. Naruto will not be able to immediately return to your realm because he will have to establish a firm grounding in that realm by his own presence, which would take about 16 years in that realm. For all of you, that will be about 1 to 3 years given the current temporal ratios between the two realms. My question is, will you accept this offer? Naruto stood in front of Tsuwanda and said, "Okay, Granny. What is my mission this time?" Part of Naruto wanted to be serious as war had started. However, he figured that his usual attitude would help Tsunade relax even if it annoyed her. It would let her know that something was going on as usual around Konoha. Fighting back the urge to groan, Tsuwanda rolled her eyes and began to debrief Naruto. "I'll be blunt, Naruto. You are too valuable for any frontline duty in the upcoming war. Intelligence suggests that Madara will send several Biju and the bulk of his forces to any location that you are active in during the war. He will use such overwhelming firepower that any comrades near you will be cut down, and you will be eventually worn down for capture. If you're captured, then Madara can resurrect the Jubi and possibly conquer the world. That is a risk that we simply cannot take. As long as Madara doesn't know where you are, he will be forced to spread out his forces, allowing us to take them down piecemeal. To ensure that Madara cannot get his hands on you, Naruto, I and the other Kages have agreed that you are to be sent to a distant land that can only be accessed by special jutsu. Your mission is to remain in that land and train until either the war is over or we find some way to ensure that Madara cannot resurrect the Jubi. This isn't an easy decision, Naruto. I know how much you want to help your friends, and you have become a very powerful ninja. Unfortunately, this war isn't about territory or the usual resources previous wars have been fought over. This war is about the Biju, which makes you even more important than the capitals of all the nations in the alliance. As hard as it is for you, Naruto, the best way you can help your friends and keep them safe is to leave." Naruto felt dead inside when he heard Tsuwanda say that to him. Part of him could intellectually understand where Tsuwanda was coming from. Despite claims to the contrary, Naruto did know a good deal about strategy and protecting vital assets. Jiraiya had often played various strategy games with him to drive this home. He understood that he was a vital military asset because he was a Jinchuriki, and that he was Madara's main objective. If Gaara or anyone else had been in this position, he would be all for keeping them safe and far away from the battlefield. However, intelligence and rationality never mean anything as far as the heart is concerned. Naruto had gone through hell and back between his battles and training to make sure he could protect his friends. After all the blood, sweat, and tears he had spent in the past, Tsunade's words made him feel like a failure. To Naruto's heart, Tsunade's was effectively saying that he wasn't good enough to fight in this war, and he needed to be protected like a little kid. Now Naruto knew that was not what Tsunade was saying or even meant, but that's what he felt like. With a resigned sigh, Naruto forced himself to look Tsuwanda in the eyes. "When do I have to leave?" Tsunade calmly said, "You'll be leaving tomorrow in secret, Naruto. I am already having Kakashi and Yamato create a set of training scrolls with different jutsus and sealing techniques to help you train. You are not to speak to anyone about your upcoming departure. I know you want to say your goodbyes, Naruto, but your friends will be safer if they know nothing about this. I also want you to know up front that the land you are traveling to does not have the same rate of time as all the other lands. While it will only seem like months to us, years could easily pass for you. Believe me, Naruto, this isn't an easy decision for me, and I only agreed to this option because I think that this will help you and everyone else out in the end." The Hokage then stood up, walked around her desk, and gave Naruto a hug. She held him gently for a few moments and then let go. Tsunade then gave Naruto a small smile. There is one good thing to all of this, Naruto. In this land that you are going to, there is a powerful lady who has a close connection to your mother. She cannot give you much direct aid due to some laws governing her station. However, she has promised to give as much aid as she can give you. Part of this is creating the jutsu that will allow you to travel to her lands. Hopefully, she'll be able to tell you more about your mother, since she and Kushina were far closer to each other than I ever realized. That news picked up Naruto's spirits. He had only recently found out that the Yondaime was his father, but he knew almost nothing about his mother. Naruto knew that his father had a wife, unlike many of his peers, since Jiraiya had once shown him a picture of the old perv with his parents. Like most ninjas, Minato had been a rather private person, and the textbooks in school had almost nothing on his private life. However, Naruto didn't even know his mother's name until just now. Naruto knew practically every bit of public information about his dad and quite a lot of personal information on him as well. But Naruto knew nothing about his mother. The chance to finally learn about her was extremely tempting and softened the blow of being sent away. Pain. Every synapse in Naruto's body was screaming in agony, forcing him awake. Naruto's eyes frantically scanned around, trying to make sense of his location. It was hard for him to focus as everything seemed blurry, bigger than it should be. Naruto quickly realized that he was restrained somehow, but it didn't feel like he had been tied up. How had he gotten into this situation? The last thing Naruto could remember was collecting his things, receiving a few scrolls from the various Kages, and standing the seal that was supposed to send him. Naruto's eyes widened as he remembers that he was supposed to be transported to another land. But why did he feel so much pain, and where was he? Naruto blinked his eyes several times as his vision started to get sharper. He saw several chairs in front of him, and that he was sitting on a raised seat on a bench with a strap of some sort keeping him in the seat. Naruto's backpack was on the bench next to him, but it seemed a lot bigger than it should be. The last thing he noticed was a letter next to his backpack. Naruto grabbed the letter and noticed that something wasn't right with his arms. However, he was still in too much pain to think about what could be the problem. Hoping for some answers, Naruto opened the letter and focused past the pain to read it. Dear Naruto, you are no doubt confused about what is going on, so this letter is to explain things to you. The first thing you must know is that you were sent to another world, and not another country, by the transportation jutsu. By being here you are safe from Madara, as only someone with links to both worlds can be transported by that jutsu. You are the only one to have such dual links because of your connection to me. The link I speak of is the fact that I am your mother, my son. The woman known as Kushina Uzumaki back in Konoha was a fragment of my essence. It was because I willed it that my fragment or dream, if you will be able to have you. First, I want you to know that I am proud at how you have grown over these years. Most heroes have broken under lesser challenges. The second fact I want you to be aware of is that I will only be able to help you indirectly. This is an ancient family law that I wholeheartedly support. Too many of my relatives would abandon their duties or spoil their offspring in ways that create terrors, such as Thetis did with Calibos, if this law was not in place. I love you dearly and wish that I could raise you like a regular mother. However, laws only have power and people's respect for them if they are applied equally to all that they affect. If you wish to be angry at me for this, I cannot fault you. Too many of my relatives' children are enraged at our indifferent attitude as necessitated by this law. All I expect is that you understand the reasons for these actions, even if you hate them. Next, I wish to explain your current circumstances. First of all, your body has been de-aged to that of a 9-year-old. This is the age you would be at if you had been born in this world, and so the jutsu shifted your form accordingly. However, you should find that your abilities are closer to what you had before traveling with Jiraiya due to my blood and the Kyuubi's influence. You should start to see some unusual abilities due to my blood no longer being suppressed like it was in your world. What abilities these are I cannot say. You are my first half-blood child, as it is not in my nature to have them. The reason why you are called a half-blood and my true name must remain secret at the moment. The more you know, the greater risk you have of being attacked. For now, you may refer to me as Kushina as it is a name of mine. I have created a cover story for your arrival in this world. To the mortal authorities, you will seem to be the orphan survivor of a car crash. Your parents for this cover are Minato and Kushina Uzumaki, who died in the car crash. Don't worry about the mortal bodies, as I altered 2 recently killed criminals to be body doubles. The crash will be used as cover to explain why you don't know many common things about this world, as you suffered some memory loss. Sorry for having to put you in a foster home, but it is the safest place for you at the moment, and will be far better than the orphanage in Konoha. When you get older, son, it will be necessary for you to relocate to a place called Camp Half-Blood. This is because the enemies I spoke of will start to detect you as you get older. I did not immediately send you to Camp Half-Blood, because I do not want my enemies to know about you for the time being. My family is well known at getting back at members we have quarrels with by attacking their children. I myself have quite the reputation for doing this, which means you will have target on your back once I claim you. Luckily, the same law that limits my ability to help you also limits the ability of my enemies to hurt you. Also, my family's influence in the area you currently are in is weak as opposed to how it is in the rest of the country. Don't worry about them using loopholes against you, as I know all of them. I will be using the time before you head to Camp Half-Blood to gain leverage over those who might wish to harm you. Love your mother. P.S. If you ever encounter Artemis and her group, be extra careful. They don't like men, and Artemis will be especially hostile to you for reasons I cannot disclose yet. She will help to protect you far more than she would other boys, unless she has more ice in her veins than I've ever been accused of having. Naruto closed the letter and hid it in his backpack. It had answered some questions, but gave him so many more. What was his mother's real name? Who was this Artemis, and why would she be potentially dangerous or helpful to him? How many enemies did his mother have, and just how strong were they? Where was this Camp Half-Blood, and when would he go to it? All these questions and many more swarmed through Naruto's head. At least one thing was certain for Naruto. His mother loved him and was proud of him. She might be limited in what she could do for him, but she was doing what she could. Naruto heard sirens coming and decided to close his eyes. He figured it would be better for his cover if he pretended to be out cold. As Naruto closed his eyes, he promised, "Mom, I will be strong enough one day that you won't ever have to fear one of your enemies attacking me." It took the authorities several weeks to sort everything out for Naruto. He soon found out that he was now living in the United States. Specifically, he was in the Panhandle part of the state of Alaska. The foster home Naruto was living in was run by a woman named Ms. Valerie Frizzle, who was a teacher at the elementary school Naruto where Naruto was registered. Currently, Naruto was the only person in Frizzle's care, as he was living in a small town. The ADHD and the dyslexia was a pain, but between his foster mother's tutoring and Kage Bunshin, Naruto was able to mostly overcome his problems. Naruto was currently roof hooping through town on his way to the junkyard. Ms. Frizzle allowed him to play outside as long as he was home by 5 p.m. and his homework was done. If his homework wasn't done, Naruto would be grounded for a week after playing outside. A small smirk appeared on Naruto's face as he quickly leaped across a street. Thanks to his clones, he never had to worry about doing his homework, which wasn't that hard in the first place. Quickly enough, Naruto reached the junkyard, which was otherwise deserted. He knew when the garbage men would arrive to dump the garbage off and when they left. The relatively remote junkyard was the perfect place for Naruto to train to keep up his skills. Naruto immediately made a dozen Kage Bunshins and had them do various taijutsu forms. Being turned into a munchkin had shot his taijutsu skill straight to hell. Sure, Naruto's chakra control had slipped some from being a little kid again, but that had been partially offset by the lowering of his chakra pool. The only thing that hadn't been messed up for Naruto was his physical strength. Actually, he was a little stronger now in his regular state than he had been as a teen in Sage mode. However, even that blessing was a curse for Naruto. His unusually strong strength wasn't off the charts like Tsunade's or Sakura's, and was more at Goei and Lee's level. But Naruto couldn't turn off his strength, and so he had to constantly train to avoid breaking something. Since his physical strength was so out of proportion to Naruto's other abilities, it made training even more difficult for him. Naruto was also curious as to why his speed hadn't increased at a similar rate. It didn't make any sense to him. On the other hand, it was cool to see from the clone's perspectives a 9-year-old bench pressing a used refrigerator loaded with scrap metal. Naruto did 20 bench presses with his improvised set of weights, and then put the refrigerator back in its garbage pile. Nearly freakish strength or not, he was physically only a 9-year-old boy. For the next couple of minutes, Naruto did some different stretches to rework some muscles he hadn't used in a while. After that, he sat down to work his control of the Rasengan. Kushina hadn't been kidding when she said that his abilities would be similar to how they were before his training trip. Thanks to his now crappy chakra control, it was impossible for Naruto to use a regular Rasengan without a Kagebunshin helping him out. Shit! Naruto yelled as he once again lost control of the Rasengan, and he quickly shoved his bruised hand into the air to avoid creating shrapnel as he lost complete control of the attack. The energies making up the Rasengan lashed out everywhere, slicing up Naruto's hands. His hands quickly started to heal until there were only some bruises. Once his hand was healed as far as the Kyuubi would heal it, Naruto sighed and leaned back against the ground. Okay, Naruto said to himself as he tried to relax for a moment. My retraining is going about as I can expect it to go. By the time I'm 10 or 11, I should be back to how I was before my sage training. Able to take out most jonin at 11 years old, I would have been so jealous back when I first turned 11. Well, I've got 40 minutes before I have to head back. Naruto then got up and continued to practice his control again. Unknown to Naruto, 2 Olympians had appeared on a dirt-covered garbage pile, and were discreetly looking at him. One of the Olympians, the one in the guise of Kushina, looked down at Naruto's training with matronly pride. The other Olympian was Artemis in a teenaged form, and her eyes were glaring at Naruto with burning hate, rage, and fear. Artemis whipped around to look at her fellow Olympian, and her rage boiled hotter. Like a viper, the huntress hissed out, "How could this have happened? How could you of all people have a half-blood?" Kushina turned to face Artemis, and her face hardened. I already explained my avatar state to you. If you really want to blame someone for me going through that, you only need to look at your father. You should be grateful to me. I could have put more effort into the jutsu that brought Naruto to this realm at his proper age relative to that realm. You would have had only 2 years then instead of the 9 you have now. I could easily have hidden Naruto from you until it was too late. Artemis' eyes widened in fear and horror at the thought. Please tell me that you aren't serious about that. The maiden goddess was shaking in fear at thought of that happening. The thought had crossed my mind every day since my pregnancy as Kushina began. I haven't been amused in the slightest these past 2,700 years of Aphrodite's attempts to bring your little wager into play. Even now, I am tempted to arrange for Naruto to have someone else as his bride so that you have to pay the forfeit, Artemis. Luckily no one noticed the goddesses, so Artemis's humiliation didn't grow even worse as she fell to her hands and knees before the other goddess. Please, don't do that. Have mercy, please. Tears were freely flowing from Artemis's eyes as she brought her head down to the other goddess's feet. I only made that bet to protect my hunters. You remember how bad Aphrodite and Eros were to them in those days. Dozens of them were raped by brigands in love with them from the lust those two caused. It was the only option I had left to bring those two to heel. Kushina nodded her head and her gaze softened at groveling goddess. She wiped away the tears on Artemis' face and gently said, I will not do that since you did what you did out of compassion for your followers. I swear by Styx that I will not arrange for Naruto to marry someone to force you into breaking your pact with Aphrodite. However, I will not give Naruto to you. The fate of your hunters rests in whether or not you can snag his heart. Don't forget, Artemis, you have 9 years to become Mrs. Uzumaki, or your hunters are Aphrodite's. Chapter 2. If there was one real downside to coming to his mother's world for Naruto, it had to be the dreams. Back in the shinobi world, as he mentally dubbed the realm of the elemental countries, Naruto never dreamed when he slept. If Naruto had dreamed in the shinobi world, then he never remembered them when he woke up. That wasn't the case now. Every night it seemed Naruto would have a bizarre or terrifying dream. Occasionally he saw his friends back in Konoha talking about the upcoming war. Many times, he saw events that seemed like ordinary things until he later found out that they were on the morning news having happened before he went to bed. Every once in a while, Naruto's dreams would focus on kids and teens fighting monsters with bronze-looking weapons. Luckily for Naruto's sanity, he was able to suppress most of these dreams. However, there were some dreams that were so vivid and powerful that Naruto couldn't suppress, and his restless sleep showed that he was having one of those dreams. In his dream, Naruto found himself looking at a silver dough. This dough had an aura of power and independence while also radiating a sense of supernatural grace. Naruto's dream self couldn't tear his attention away from the dough as she grazed in a meadow by a forest filled with old growth. Naruto wished he could get closer to get a better look at the dough, but every time his dream self tried to take a step the dough would stop grazing and start acting skittish. Naruto contented himself to just watching the magnificent creature from a distance as he'd rather gaze at it in peace than lose it. This wonderful scene ended when of all things a dove dived from the sky and racked the dough's head with its claws. The sheer absurdity of such a tiny bird attacking the dough never entered Naruto's mind as he watched the dove torment the dough. Naruto wanted to protect the deer but found that he suddenly wasn't able to move an inch. He could only watch helplessly as the dove tore chunks of the silvery fur from the dough. Soon the beautiful silver beast could take no more of the fowl's attacks and fled across the meadow. Thankfully for Naruto, his dream self was carried along as the doe made her mad dash to escape the dove. On and on the doe raced as she desperately tried to escape from the dove's attacks. These attacks only got worse as a second, smaller dove joined in the assault. Naruto wished that she would find a way to escape her tormentors, and he furiously struggled to move on his own in vain. Eventually, the doe came to a grapevine growing near a river and called out the doves. What she said Naruto couldn't hear, but he was grateful that the doves stopped their attack to listen. He watched as the doe gave the grapes on the vine to the two doves, causing them to act like they were drunk. Part of Naruto figured that the doe would now squash her tormentors since they were at her mercy, or at least use the opportunity to escape. But that didn't happen, and instead the doe turned around and pointed straight at Naruto with her hoof. For a second, Naruto thought that the doe was pointing to him. His gaze was then forced down and he saw a peahen sitting by an empty nest with a large eagle nearby. The doves nodded their head, and then all three drank from the nearby river. Seconds after the three animals drank from the river, the doves regained their senses and squawked with indignity. The doe gave off the sense of smugness and calmly walked back to her woods. Seasons flashed before Naruto's eyes like the pages of a flip book, and then the progression of seasons halted. This time Naruto's vision was focused on the peahen and not the doe. He watched as the peahen's shadow started to move on its own, and left the peahen at the still empty nest. Unable to move, Naruto was pulled along behind the shadow, as it wandered off on its own into a jungle. Soon enough the shadow made its way to a massive tree and started playing in the tree's branches, trilling happily. The shadow's happiness was momentarily disturbed when the Kyuubi of all creatures appeared in the vision. Dread filled Naruto's heart as he saw the titanic beast approach the shadow and the tree. He desperately wanted to put himself between the Kyuubi and the shadow. However, Naruto was once again reduced to a mere spectator of what was obviously going to be a very grisly scene. Things did not go as Naruto figured they would. Instead of Kyuubi destroying the tree and shadow, the peahen's shadow turned around and ate the Kyuubi. The sight would have been comical to Naruto if it wasn't for the sheer absurdity of the idea of the strongest Biju being eaten by this tiny little shadow. The shadow grew larger after its meal until it was 3 times the size of the eagle that had been near the peahen earlier. After a few minutes the shadow wandered away from the tree and returned to the now equally larger peahen. The shadow and the peahen linked back together and laid an egg. Suddenly, Naruto found himself in a dark and restricting room with the walls pressing in on all his limbs. Naruto pushed against the walls trying to get some space, and found that he couldn't get them to budge. Never one to give up, Naruto kept struggling to free himself by pushing against the walls. Eventually the walls gave way with a loud crack, and a blinding light filled the room. Naruto quickly closed and then reopened his eyes with them adjusted to the light. A quick look around revealed that the room he had been trapped in was actually an egg. Naruto then looked up and saw the massive head of a peahen looking down at him tenderly. However, the weirdest thing about it all was he saw his reflection in the peahen's cow-like eyes. The reflection wasn't human or even that of a fox like he feared, but that of a coyote. At that point Naruto bolted awake panting in fear and shock. His breathing quickly calmed down to normal when the young half-blood saw that he was in his bed in his room. A quick glance at the alarm clock on his nightstand told Naruto that it was 3 in the morning. Naruto let out a small groan and said, "That's it. No more jalapeno enchiladas for dinner." Next week, Naruto and his classmates were loaded up onto a school bus to go on a field trip. Naruto sat near the back of the bus next to the class worrywart, who all the other kids were avoiding. He then watched as Arnold folded his hands together and prayed, "Please let this be a normal field trip. I'm begging you, just this once can we have a nice, normal, and safe field trip?" Dorothy Ann, who was sitting 2 rows up and to the boy's left, let out a sigh of frustration while still keeping her head in her book. "How many times do we have to tell you, Arnold? There is no such thing as monsters and our field trips are perfectly normal. It's your imagination that's the problem." The other members of the class started rolling their eyes and joking about the worrywart. Naruto glanced at the rearview mirror and thought he saw Ms. Frizzle flinch for a split second. Something wasn't right with this situation. Naruto could feel it in his gut as Arnold didn't feel like he was lying. He leaned in a little closer to the now glum kid and said, "What's going on, Arnold? You're an honest guy, so why is everyone acting like you're crazy?" Arnold sighed and said, "Look, I know that everyone thinks I've got an overactive imagination, but I don't. I swear this is the truth, even though you'll think I'm trying to pull your leg. These creatures straight out of fantasy always appear when we go on field trips. On our last trip to a ranch, I actually saw a bull that looked like it was made of bronze and breathed fire. However, no one else seems to see these creatures or the other weird things that happen in our class. Have you ever stopped to consider the fact that we're the only 3rd grade class with 9 students? All of the other classes in school have 30 or more students in them." Naruto stopped to consider that fact. It was a little odd that their class had so few students in it. But then again, they were a small-town school, so it could have just been instantly. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as he felt the effects of Genjutsu starting to affect his mind. He quickly made the ram hand sign and whispered Kai. As soon as he did that, Naruto's mind no longer found itself wandering whenever he thought about the class's size. That lent a lot of credence to Arnold's claim that something weird was happening. The young demigod then guardedly whispered to Arnold, "Yes, that is a little odd. Shouldn't we have some of the students from other classes, so that all class sizes are about equal?" Arnold's eyes widened as he realized that Naruto wasn't trying to humor him about his delusions. The young boy quickly cleaned his glasses and then looked at the other 7 students in the class. Once Arnold was sure no one else was paying attention to them, he continued his discussion. "That's just the thing, Naruto. We did have 25 students in this class back when the school year started. At least, I remember us having 25 students at the beginning of the year. I remember there was a situation back in August when I could have sworn a group of giants attacked the class on the playground. The very next day, everyone who was injured was suddenly not in our class and in another class. After that we started going on field trips every couple of weeks. Every couple of field trips it seems that someone would get seriously hurt, and then the next day they'd appear in another homeroom." Naruto frowned when he heard what Arnold told him, and his recent brush with the unknown illusion attempt. Something wasn't right here and Naruto wanted to know why. Part of him considered the possibility of a consistent attack by ninjas. However, that didn't make any rational sense. Why would anyone order an attack on a class of kids in Nowhere, Alaska? Furthermore, what kind of mission involves beating up children and then making everyone believe that they're part of another class? The possibility of this somehow involving him didn't make sense even to a madman. Something was targeting this class long before he came to this world. Very quickly Naruto's sense of justice boiled to the surface. It was the same sense that had pushed him to complete the mission in Wade even though he knew that he was hitting way above his limit while not admitting it. It was the same sense that drove him to do stupidly heroic stunts to save several lands during his training with Jiraiya. In fact, Naruto's late grandfather had grumbled many times that Naruto was stubborn as an ox when it came to correcting what he saw as an injustice. Whatever was attacking his classmates needed to be stopped and he'd see to that, even if he still didn't have his former strength. "Don't worry, Arnold," Naruto firmly said, "I've got a few tricks of my own and some experience with weirdness. I'll help you get to the bottom of this." The class's field trip was to a mechanic shop in a nearby town. It was actually quite interesting as the shop dealt with custom cars, and the owner was apparently old friends with Ms. Frizzle. Nathaniel Lloyd, the shop's owner, was a big burly man with a dark full beard that looked like it had been singed multiple times. Nathaniel stood a good foot taller than Ms. Frizzle as he greeted the class by the door. "Hello there, Valerie, it's good to see you again." The duo gave each other a good strong hug, and then Mr. Lloyd addressed the class, "Hello everyone and welcome to my shop. Now, this isn't just a regular car garage. As I'm sure Ms. Frizzle has told you, all this is a custom car garage. Does anyone know what that means?" Dorothy spoke up, "Sir, I think that means to you work on different cars than most people drive." Nathaniel patted Dorothy on the head and replied, "You're partially correct, kiddo. It means that my crew and I modify cars for increased performance. We also will build a car from scratch if someone is willing to put in an order. Oh, don't let the car part fool you. We also do trucks, vans, and motorcycles as well. Now let's go to Garage Bay number 2 where the boys are working on restoring a 1955 T-Bird." A thump was heard as the group started to walk towards the garage. By chance, Naruto was looking at Ms. Frizzle and saw her give Nathaniel a knowing glance. Seconds later another thump was heard, followed soon afterward by a slightly louder thump. Arnold spoke up and said, "What was that, Mr. Lloyd?" Nathaniel smoothly replied, "Something probably fell in one of the garages. Why don't you kids head over to that garage bay while I go check it out? Valerie, could you be a dear and come with me while I check this out?" As Nathaniel spoke, Naruto felt the effects of a genjutsu trying to trap him. Since he was on guard for any possible illusion, it didn't get a hold of him. Naruto quickly glanced at his classmates and noticed that everyone aside from Arnold was walking towards the garage without a care in the world. Arnold was walking with the others, but his face was guarded and he was hanging back from the others. His reaction reminded Naruto of a wary academy student waiting for a surprise test that the teachers would occasionally issue by randomly attacking students. A quick glance showed Nathaniel and Ms. Frizzle walking in the opposite direction for the class and towards the thumping sound, which was definitively coming from outside the shop. It was blatantly obvious to Naruto that he needed to use his clones to keep track of his classmates and investigate this situation. He just needed to figure out if he should guard his classmates himself or leave that to the clones. Naruto closed his eyes for a second and made up his mind. A Kage Bunshin popped into existence 2 seconds later and quickly ran after the rest of the class. The young shinobi then bit his thumb and ran the bloody digit across a seal hidden on his belt buckle. The loss of part of his skills and ability had made Naruto nervous ever since he came to Earth. Sure, he didn't have to worry about Akatsuki anymore, but there were his mother's enemies that might be calling with a bone to pick. A deck of playing cards popped out of the seal, and Naruto quickly grabbed them. These cards had been altered by Naruto, so that each one was an explosive tag. He had ripped the idea off of Gambit from the X-Men cartoon, but it worked as a quick defense he could prepare without trying to hide a regular shinobi's armory. Valerie and Nathaniel quickly rushed out of the shop with Naruto following a few feet away. There was another, even louder, thump that caused both adults to frown with concern. Nathaniel then mumbled something in a language that Naruto couldn't understand. However, it sounded very familiar to Naruto, and understanding was just out of the young shinobi's grasp. He ignored the language puzzle for the moment, was watched as Valerie nodded her head. Ms. Frizzle reached up, grabbed an earring with each hand, gave them a small twist, and then pulled the earrings apart. The pieces in her hands morphed into a celestial bronze spear and shield. At the same time, Nathaniel grabbed a hammer from his tool belt, and it morphed into a celestial bronze war hammer. Both adults took defensive postures, looking out towards the source of the thumping, which was now radiating killing intent. Naruto's eyes bulged out in shock when he saw 3 15-feet-tall Cyclopes walked into view, revealing that the thumping was from the monsters walking. Each of Cyclopes were dressed like outlaw bikers, and their skin was covered in tattoos depicting all manner of carnage. Their clothes all had bloodstains, some were old and some were quite recent. A slight shifting of the breeze almost caused Naruto to gag from the stench of rotten human flesh. The Cyclops on the right opened his mouth, and a wicked-looking grin showcasing his rotten-looking yellow teeth with scraps of meat hanging off of them. Well, the Cyclops in the center said. It isn't often that we find half-bloods up here in the north. Most of your kind likes to cower in that camp of yours. It's even rarer to see such well-aged meat. He then paused for a second to take a second sniff like he was some kind of wine taster. The Cyclops's eye narrowed on Ms. Frizzle in a bit of wonder. Could our day get even better? I never thought I'd ever see a virgin half-blood of mixed lineage at your age. With a gruff glare to his comrades, the center Cyclops said, "Deal with Hephaestus's child as you think fit, brothers. The female half-blood is mine. If either of you so much as nibbles on her flesh, I'll eat your entrails for breakfast." "Sorry, scum," Nathaniel said in a mocking tone, "your dinner plans will have to change. Tartarus has a reservation for the 3 of you for at least the next decade." With that said, the 2 demigods rushed into battle with the monstrous trio. Naruto watched as the adults quickly demolished the Cyclopes with experience born out of many battles. He noticed that absolutely none of their movements were wasted or flashy in any way. Their speed was somewhere between what the average Chunin and the average Jonin would fight at. Strangely enough, Naruto couldn't detect any chakra being used. Nathaniel hopped onto the left Cyclops' arm and quickly bashed the monster's skull in with his hammer. At the same time, Ms. Frizzle blocked a punch from the right Cyclops with her shield. She quickly followed her block by driving her spear into the base of her opponent's neck. The Cyclops in the center quickly backed up to a wrecked car and picked it up. This was when Naruto decided to intervene and threw 6 explosive cards. 3 of the cards struck the car and the other 3 hit the Cyclops. One was square in the head and the other 2 struck the center of the monster's chest. The car was ripped to shreds while the top half of the Cyclops was reduced to chunky salsa. Both of the adult half-bloods whipped their heads around to see Naruto standing sideways on a telephone pole holding another set of cards to throw. Naruto surprised them by radiating a great deal of power and speaking with a firm, commanding voice. "Will someone explain to me what is going on and why monsters out of Greek mythology are appearing out of nowhere?" Nathaniel sighed and said, "Come down from there, boy, and we can talk about this in my office. There is less chance of anyone overhearing us that way." 10 minutes later the trio was in Nathaniel's office, and the big man was passing out sodas from a small refrigerator that had a statue of Hephaestus standing on top. Naruto noticed that Nathaniel glanced at a small green light on his desk, and then sighed as he sat down. He glanced at Ms. Frizzle and said, "Now that we're safe, we can tell the youngest member of the club about the real world. Since he's your charge, do you want the honors, Valerie?" Ms. Frizzle nodded her head and turned to face Naruto. "This may be difficult for you to accept, Naruto. The Weavers know that most of us have trouble with this at first, but you are not a normal human. However, I suspect you already know part of that given your explosive playing cards. Everything that regular people classify as Greek mythology is real. Most mortals just cannot see it due to the mist which clouds their vision to reality. no one in this room is immortal. Nathaniel, I, and now you Naruto are half-bloods. That is the modern term used to describe the demigods. I am the daughter of Persephone and the granddaughter of Hygeia on my father's side. Nathaniel here is the son of Hephaestus. We don't know who your divine mother or father is and won't know until they claim you. Usually, young half-bloods such as yourself are ignorant of all of this, since the knowledge makes it harder for your scent to be hidden from monsters. Standard practice for older and wiser half-bloods in such situations is to manipulate the mist so that you remain unaware and safe until you can get to a secure location for training. However, your resistance to the mist means that your scent will be extraordinarily strong. At this point, having you in the know and teaching you to defend yourself is the best solution. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he heard this information. If Ms. Frizzle was telling him the truth and Naruto couldn't see any signs of her lying, then that meant that his mom was a goddess. That at least explained what she meant by Kushina being a part of her essence. He then asked, this secure location wouldn't happen to be called Camp Half-Blood, would it? Both adults were shocked to hear Naruto say that. Nathaniel calmly spoke up, where did you hear about the camp? It was in a letter from my mother. She said that I'd eventually need to go there for safety. However, she didn't want me appearing there immediately as she wanted to keep some of her enemies in their place before they could attack her through me. Her letter said that someone named Artemis would be especially hostile to my existence, but should help me stay safe if we ever met. Would this Artemis be the same Artemis spoken of in the myths? As soon as Naruto said that, both adults paled as they remembered one of the myths that had not been revealed to mortals by the Muses. Nathaniel quickly tapped out a message to Ms. Frizzle in a variation of Morse code they had created at camp. Could he possibly be her child? I don't know. I suspected he might be one of us, but none of the usual patterns were showing up. There are dozens of deities who rarely have children, so that his mother could be one of them. What are the odds that she'd finally decide to bear a half-blood? If she has, then the shit is about to hit the fan. Especially when you consider the recent power changes up on Olympus. Only a claiming will settle things, but if his could be hers then he will need more protection. Perhaps that letter will hold some clues. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and said, I'm right here, you know. I don't know what you're saying to each other in that code of yours, but I'm betting it's about me. A faint blush of embarrassment crossed Ms. Frizzle's face, and she quickly replied, I'm sorry about that, Naruto. It's just that your statement raised some alarms due to a potentially complicated situation that you don't know about. I would like to see that letter when we go home if you don't mind. While only a claiming can sort out our concerns, the letter could provide clues to help us protect you. The young shinobi felt extremely nervous over the idea of someone else reading his mother's letter. It was one of the few belongings he had from his mother after all. Not to mention, the letter contained clues about why he was on Earth, and that he wasn't a normal half-blood. Sure, he hadn't been told to keep that he was a ninja a secret, but his situation was too close to an espionage mission for Naruto to just hand over that information. I'll think about it, Ms. Frizzle. Sorry, it's just that my mother's letter is the only thing I have from her, so I'm very protective of it. Ms. Frizzle nodded her head and said, I understand perfectly, Naruto. Gifts from one's divine parent are to be treasured since they cannot spend much time with us. There will be some changes when we get home, Naruto. This area is a natural wellspring of earth magic and is currently at the peak of its energy output cycle. That means that monsters are naturally drawn here and half-blood scents are magnified even more than normal to them. I've been trying to keep the monsters away from mortals by periodically amplifying the wellspring's effects on myself, and then disposing the monsters that are attracted. Your free time will have to be curtailed in heavy training until the wellspring starts to wane in strength in a few months. We can discuss this when we get home. Now, do you have any questions left? A thought crossed Naruto's mind and he thought about Arnold. What about my classmate Arnold? Is he one of us? I know he is able to see the monsters and he has noticed when the mist is used. There was a small shake of Ms. Frizzle's head before she answered Naruto. No, Arnold is immortal. Unlike 99.999% of mortals, Arnold is clear-sighted, which means that the mist has no effect on him at all. Hopefully he can keep his head down where the monsters are concerned. Many monsters consider clear-sighted mortals to be a delicacy, just under snacking on a half-blood. But don't worry too much about him, since you and I are priority targets for monsters. Should we keep him safe and he stays a good young man like he is, then Arnold has a very good future ahead of him. I wouldn't be too surprised if a Dryad or Naiad decided to make him their boyfriend or future husband. Still, it would be best to keep this information secret from him until he's older. Hidden away in Mount St. Helens, Naruto's mother, in her mortal aspect of Kushina, worked at her son's forge. What most half-bloods didn't know was that Olympus had a currency system set up for helping their children and champions. Each deity received a small stipend of favor which could be relinquished to aid one's children or champion. Hera had helped to push through that law millennia ago to try and prevent an arms race between the gods, with the demigods being used in proxy wars. Since she had crafted the law, she also knew how to exploit it. For instance, finished magical items like the copies of Hermes's flying shoes cost an enormous amount of favor to give. On the other hand, raw supplies like celestial bronze ingots or drachma used up very little favor. Naruto needed a proper weapon for a half-blood. Hera knew that her son would almost certainly start trying to protect mortals from monsters, even if he wasn't in his old fighting form. He was too much like Minato in that regard, always doing his best to protect the people under his care. She knew that she'd probably need most of her stored-up favor to help bail Naruto out of the troubles he'd enviably get into in the future. Why her mortal aspect had so much trouble Hera couldn't fathom, but Naruto had inherited that as well. Shifting part of herself back into her mortal aspect allowed her as Kushina to make Naruto a suitable weapon for a fraction of the favor cost. Normally a mortal couldn't work with celestial bronze, but Kushina was born in the shinobi realm, and every mortal there counted as a half-blood as far as the rules of Earth's reality were concerned. Kushina carefully watched as two Kage Bunshins heated one of the ingots and beat it out into the necessary size she needed. Her divine aspect was still on Olympus in order to hide what she was doing for the time being. Kushina shook her head and triple-checked the seal array she would soon be engraving onto the ingot. Creating Naruto's weapon while in her mortal aspect did have one massive disadvantage. Being immortal as Kushina, she was limited to mortal blacksmithing techniques which were inferior to divine techniques. That meant that a sword or any other weapon she could make would be inferior to something a god or Cyclops could make without throwing in extra magical abilities. So, she couldn't smith a sword with a monomolecular edge, big deal. As Kushina, she could utilize all of her sealing abilities to create a far more dangerous weapon. Naruto's new weapon would be more than enough once she was through. Her son's new Kanabo would be extremely versatile. The adjustable gravity seals would allow the Kanabo's weight to go from 1 pound to 600,000 tons if Naruto wished. Unlike that showboat Heracles, Naruto naturally had her divine parental power legacy, instead of a sliver siphoned off by a quirk of fate. Zeus never bothered to investigate why that particular brat was so much stronger than his other bastard brothers before or after his birth. The small frown caused by that thought vanished as Kushina thought about everything else she was adding to the Kanabo. It would have the ability to channel and amplify any chakra Naruto used. Given that her son was a wind elemental, she figured that he could give the Kanabo an edge just as sharp as a divinely made sword for a negligible chakra drain. But the piece de resistance to this weapon was in the core of the Kanabo. She had crafted a special set of seals to drain excess demonic chakra from Naruto's seal while he was holding it. This stored chakra would then be sealed within the Kanabo until Naruto released it in a Bijudama. The core could only store 1 Bijudama, and it took a month to charge 1 shot. Naruto could speed up the recharge by infusing the Kanabo with demonic chakra. However, the best part of it was that she could legally give her son a weapon with firepower similar to her husband's Master Bolt. Up on Olympus, Hera grinned at her mortal aspect's thoughts. If Zeus complained about it, well, she could always give him a revised 1,000 years of pain with said Master Bolt. It's not like any of the other Olympians would complain about her giving Naruto the Kanabo. After all, she hadn't broken any of the rules, and she was too powerful to openly challenge. The headaches of having a mortal avatar were well worth the benefits. Especially since imprisoning the Kyuubi within Kushina had increased her divine powers to the point that she was as strong as her three brothers combined. Hera stood up from the throne in her temple complex and walked to a small room that was off of a side corridor. Unlike the other rooms of her private sanctuary, this room had a Japanese decorating theme. This was her mortal hall where she stored valuable items from her time as Kushina. Hera's eyes immediately drifted to a stand which contained a photo of her and Minato's wedding. The goddess was instantly assaulted by a wide range of conflicting emotions just as she had every time she saw that photo. Part of her was disgusted with herself for effectively cheating on Zeus even if he was a god whore. Another part of her knew that she hadn't done anything wrong. The kami of the shinobi realm had told her one important rule when Kushina died: an avatar isn't the same person as a god, so their actions don't reflect on said deity much. Yet another part of Hera was happy to have experienced a happy and honest marriage. A small tear fell from Hera's eye's side. "Don't worry, Minato, I'll make sure that Naruto grows into the man he is supposed to be." Chapter 3. Naruto and Ms. Frizzle walked into their house after returning from the field trip. Once they had put their shoes away, Ms. Frizzle turned and said, "It's time to show you where I've hidden some of the more interesting items in the house. Many of these things are dangerous and not to be played with. I trust you have some idea of this given your exploding cards?" A nervous chuckle came from Naruto's lips as he scratched the back of his head. Yes, Ms. Frizzle." He had been hoping that she wouldn't remember, or at least not bring those up so soon. The elder half-blood nodded her head and replied, "Good. I was hoping that you have some understandings of how serious weapons are given that you somehow made those cards yourself." A small smirk appeared on her face as she saw the shocked look on Naruto's face. "Please, Naruto, it wasn't that hard for someone in the know to figure out you made those cards yourself. Such things don't exist in the mortal world. You couldn't have gotten them from a deity since it's not one of gifts that they would bestow. After several thousand years of records, we half-bloods know all the types of gifts our divine relatives will give out. However, I think Lord Hermes and maybe Lord Apollo might like to add exploding cards to their inventory of gifts. I also know that no other half-blood created them since all of us Camp Half-Blood alumni keep in contact. Therefore, the only answer left is that you made them yourself. Since I haven't heard of any mysterious or weird explosions around town, I'm going to assume that you know how to make those safely and trust you to be responsible when you make more." Some people would question Ms. Frizzle's intelligence in trusting a 9-year-old to make explosives safely. She knew her mother would give her an earful when she found out. However, there was a reason to her madness. It was obvious that Naruto had some secrets that he was trying to protect. What they were she couldn't imagine, but they probably had something to do with those exploding cards of his. Once Naruto trusted her enough and could share his secrets, he probably would. She just needed to be patent. Besides, explosions weren't that much higher on the danger list than working with bladed weapons. First things first though, and Ms. Frizzle led Naruto to the kitchen. She reached into one of the cabinets and revealed a hidden door in it. Behind the hidden door there was a small safe containing a basin with a small fire burning in it. Ms. Frizzle carefully took out the basin and recently put it on the countertop. "This is my house's hearth, Naruto. I use it to make offerings to my mother and sometimes my grandmother before meals. It's customary among half-bloods to sacrifice the choice piece of their meals to their divine parent. You're also expected to offer sacrifice to other gods or goddesses when they help you in times of need when it is not in their interest to do so or just as a means of thanks. For example, I typically offer a sacrifice to my grandmother once a week. Many of the campers at Camp Half-Blood who are the children of minor deities will offer a sacrifice to Hermes every once in a while since he lets them stay in his cabin. Even though we don't know who your mother is at the moment, it would be a good thing if you joined me in this custom by offering sacrifices to her as well." Naruto nodded his head, quickly catching on to what he was being told. He then thought of something and asked, should I also make an offering to Artemis as well, since my mother's letter says that she won't want to help me even though she probably would? Ms. Frizzle thought about it for a second and then replied, that would probably be a good idea, Naruto. However, you should remember to make whatever you offer her the best you can or the second best if you're also making an offering to your mother at the same time. Many deities get annoyed at low-quality sacrifices made by someone who annoys them and is trying to ease their wrath. However, you also shouldn't go overboard with the offerings either. Also, every deity gets annoyed when someone tries to bribe them with offerings. Well, except for Lord Zeus, who will gladly take any sacrifice besides human sacrifice or mutilation and prefers them to be as grand as possible. The really important part of any sacrifice, though, is the right disposition and sincerity of the offer. The elder half-blood bowed her head slightly at the hearth and Naruto copied the movement moments later. Ms. Frizzle gave her charge a small smile and said, "This way, Naruto. I still have several things to show you." She quickly led them to the study and walked over to the small black statue of Cerberus. Naruto then watched as his caretaker firmly placed her hand on the left, right, and center heads. As she did this, she said in Greek, one word per head, "I request sanctuary." The floor rumbled for several seconds as part of the floor parted to reveal a staircase. The staircase had a bit of space at the bottom, so that celestial bronze door it was connected to could open. Naruto quickly considered what could be behind the door. His first thoughts were an armory, but that didn't make much sense. Ms. Frizzle had a rifle that she kept in an armored gun safe bolted in her closet. He only knew that because they occasionally had some game that she caught. Logically, her weapons would be kept there as well. Also, the study was in the center of the house without any windows, allowing someone to work without enemies on the outside seeing them. To the ninja, it equaled only one possible solution. That's some sort of safe room if we're ever attacked, right? Ms. Frizzle raised an eyebrow at Naruto's near lightning fast deduction. She honestly expected him to be confused about the door's purpose, or think it led to some sort of secret clubroom. Correct, Naruto, there is a safe room behind that door. It's stocked with enough provisions to last 4 people a week and has a connection to several hidden cameras on the edge of the property. If I ever tell you to head for sanctuary, I expect you to run here and stay in that room. A child of Hecate enchanted it so that monsters can almost never find it. Even if they could find it, almost no monster can break through the room's armor. Once you're in the room, I expect you to remain in it until either I come to get you or a day has passed since whatever might attack this house leaves. Is that understood? As Ms. Frizzle said that, she gave Naruto such a piercing and commanding gaze that no one could possibly doubt the royalty in her divine lineage. In response to Ms. Frizzle's command, Naruto gave her a firm nod. She then smiled and said, "It's good that we're clear on this issue, Naruto. The final thing you need to know is that I keep several weapons made from celestial bronze, one of very few things that can hurt monsters, locked up in the gun safe. I'll bring out a few weapons now and then for practice, but other than that they remain locked up." Months flew by and things quickly settled into a new routine at the Frizzle/Uzumaki house. Twice a week Ms. Frizzle gave Naruto weapons training and taught him about the various monsters he could encounter in the future. He eventually came partly clean about his past. Naruto revealed that he was from another realm that his mother had once visited, where people used abilities that were almost magical here on Earth. Ms. Frizzle was also told that he was taught about these abilities at his school back in that realm, and that his mother had brought him to Earth for safety. Of course, Naruto neglected to mention anything about training to be a ninja, the Kyuubi, the age change, or that people were considering him for a flea on sight danger ranking. Those were just minor details that no one on Earth needed to know about. Before Naruto realized it, his birthday was just around the corner. He and Ms. Frizzle were planning a quiet celebration at their house. Naruto was a little annoyed that he couldn't have a birthday party with his classmates over. However, the increased Earth magic was currently at its peak, making it necessary for the two half-bloods to minimize their contact with mortals as much as possible. Naruto quickly used his parents' recent death as a cover for not holding a party. Currently, Naruto was in the backyard trying to sense nature energy. He didn't have any illusions about regaining Sage Mode for the time being. His body was still too young to handle that kind of power. Naruto just wanted to do as much as he could so that when he was physically ready, he could regain Sage Mode again ASAP. Sensing nature energy was a step that he could safely do at the present time. One would think that with all the earth magic being kicked up that it should be easy for him to sense nature energy. However, earth magic did not equal nature energy and in fact made the whole process harder. The closet Naruto could think of comparing his attempt to sense nature energy at the moment would be to someone trying to hear a cricket chirp during a rock concert. Naruto opened his eyes and sighed, "Looks like that's a bust." He then got up and headed back into the house. Once inside the house, Naruto looked at a picture of a teenaged Ms. Frizzle and several of her friends at Camp Half-Blood. Just 2 more years and then Ms. Frizzle would let him go to the camp. Naruto was extremely interested in the camp because he wanted to meet some half-bloods his own age. It was always great having people you could relate to around. None of the kids would be in the same boat as he was, but they would be in similar situations. Hopefully they'd be more mature as dealing with his classmates was starting to get annoying at times. Especially Carlos, if he made one more lame pun or joke again then Naruto was going to resurrect his prank king from hell routine with Carlos as his main target, believe it. Ms. Frizzle came out of the kitchen wearing an apron and a dress with a hurricane theme on it. She had just finished mixing Naruto's birthday cake and had put it in the oven. "Good morning, Naruto, did you enjoy your time meditating?" "Yes, I did. Wish it was more productive, but it was good all the same." The elder half-blood nodded her head and gave Naruto a motherly smile. "That's good to hear. Now, we've got about 2 hours before the cake is done and we can add the icing. How would you like to watch a movie while we wait?" Before Naruto could speak, the doorbell rang. Ms. Frizzle smiled and said, "Just think about it while I go see what that's about." Naruto nodded his head and headed over to the movie rack to think about what he might want to watch. He was thinking about putting on Attila again. For some inexplicable reason, that film was extremely satisfying and made him feel as if a cancer was being removed. But he had watched that movie last week on movie night, so wasn't it too soon to be watching it again? Naruto's musings came to an abrupt halt when Ms. Frizzle called out, "Come here, Naruto. It seems your relative in New York has left you a present." Naruto's heart started to race as he ran towards the front door. Relative from New York was a code for the Olympians between Ms. Frizzle and Naruto. The young shinobi could hardly wait to see what his mother had given him. Even a simple birthday card would be more valuable to him than all the gold in Fort Knox. Besides, he could swipe everything in Fort Knox if he felt like it. Ms. Frizzle had moved out of the way so that Naruto could get to the front porch. There was a wooden crate at the front door with a letter gently resting on top. He pounced on the letter and eagerly opened it up so he could read it. "Dear son, I know that this letter will find you in good health and hopefully happy on your birthday. You have made me proud with how well you are adapting to my world. I know that you want to spend time with me, and I wish to spend time with you. However, duty must come before pleasure. Such is the burden of any leader, whether they are a deity or a mere kage. You should know that I am looking into some avenues that may allow me to visit you from time to it. Whether these possibilities can be realized, or that I can do them without compromising my ability to do my duties, remains to be seen. Hopefully, my suspicions will pan out, and I will be able to see you in person soon. If they do not work, then know that I have tried and will keep trying, when possible, to be with you, my son. Within the chest are your birthday present and your inheritance from my mortal self. The Kanabo is my gift to you, and will help you fight off monsters foolish enough to challenge you. Instructions for its full abilities are in the chest. The inheritance is copies of several books typically used by the Uzumaki clan for training. You will also find copies of my mortal self's diary and the journal of your father. Use them to grow stronger, and know that I am looking out for you even though you cannot see me. Love. Mother. Tears of joy freely flowed down Naruto's face as he read the letter. He didn't care about the weapon in the crate or the books at the moment. Sure, part of him was ecstatic to have them, but that wasn't what made him euphoric. All Naruto cared about at that moment was that his mother loved him, and was trying to spend time with him. It might turn out that she couldn't spend much time with him if any, but that was alright. The mere fact that she wanted to and was trying to find a way that didn't conflict with her duties was enough for Naruto. A dark cloud had metaphorically covered the hunters' camp for months and spread a feeling of impending catastrophe to the hunters. Each of the young women was walking on eggshells around their beloved mistress, sensing a terror growing in the goddess's heart and not knowing what they should do to solve the problem. This presence of gloom had suddenly come about one day months ago, and had just grown steadily worse. However, the presence today was especially heavy today for some reason. There was also terror woven into the camp's atmosphere that radiated out from Artemis's tent. 4 of the 50 maidens quietly stood in a nearby grove that gave them an excellent view of Artemis's tent. These 4 hunters were Zoe, Phoebe, Atlanta, and Daphne. All 4 young women were special among the hunters as they were the last of Artemis's original 50. Their other original sisters had been lost through time either by accidents, wars, going astray, or Aphrodite's attacks. They knew more about the hunt and their mistress than any other hunter could possibly hope to know. Daphne started the clandestine meeting by saying, "There is a storm on the horizon. This presence is its herald and our mistress is at its heart." Phoebe nodded her head and continued, "We need to find out what is going to happen and put a stop to it. I don't know about you 3, but ever since this mood settled in on the hunt I've felt like I'm being judged. Plus there's been a touch of danger in the air that hasn't been there since." Phoebe's voice faltered as she was unable to bring herself to say what was on her mind. "The danger that we haven't faced since Lady Artemis tricked Aphrodite," Atlanta dryly and bluntly stated, the one thing that none of the quartet wanted to bring up. Atlanta looked her sisters in the eye and continued on. "Let's not shy away from the facts. We never experienced this kind of pervasive danger when we fought against the giants or our clashes with the corrupted ones. This danger we sense has only been felt when Aphrodite and Eros hunted us to spite Lady Artemis." Zoe shook her head. "That is not possible. Our Lady's Gambit still stands as the greatest plan of any of the Olympians. Aphrodite and Eros cannot touch or even come near us, or they forfeit their divinity. Their attempts at using the corrupted ones against us always failed in the past. Now the other Olympians have given strict orders that they be kept away from us and even the campers. Her children are worthless when it comes to battle, and no other camper would be willing to provoke Our Lady's wrath. The danger cannot come from that corner, as those 2 are harmless to us for the rest of time." Daphne shook her head. "They are not harmless to us for the rest of time, Zoe. Remember, there is a price for our respite from them. A price that will not have to be paid," Phoebe hissed with such venom that one could almost think she was part serpent. "Don't forget we all spent 5 years helping Lady Artemis craft that wager. We all agreed risking Lady Hera's wrath was acceptable at the time because there is no way that she'd ever cheat on her husband." Atlanta nervously looked at her sisters. "I wouldn't be so sure of that these days. Lady Hera never before wielded the kind of strength and power that she does now. No one knows where or how she gained her new abilities. All we do know is that a decade ago she suddenly became strong enough to make herself the real power in Olympus. The Thunderer might still be king in name, but everyone knows he is effectively a figurehead for the council these days. While no one is quite sure what to make about the new dynamics, it is obvious that they are here to stay. Also, we mustn't forget that this presence only came to the camp after our mistress had a meeting with Lady Hera." Zoe shook her head. "I refuse to even consider such a line of thought unless it is told to me by Lady Artemis. Besides, we all swore when we crafted this plan that our mistress would be safe no matter what. You were the one who created our final plan, Atlanta, so that we would never be hostages to be used against Lady Artemis. I was willing to use it back then, and I am still willing to use it now if the fates decree it." Phoebe nodded her head. "I'm with Zoe on this matter. You 2 are creating problems where there are none. Besides, my promise remains even if your phantom nightmares were to become real." "Don't tell me that you 2 are afraid?" Daphne and Atlanta looked at each other and quickly communicated with a glance. Daphne then spoke for both of them. neither of us is afraid to die. You could hand me a cup of hemlock this very moment, and I would happily drink it if I knew it would protect Our Lady. However, you two have forgotten something extremely important. We are the only hunters left who swore that oath or even know about it. How would you suggest we go about organizing a mass suicide if fates forbid Lady Hera does have a half-blood? Our younger sisters are effectively hostages if this forbidding presence does herald what we fear. Zoe stood up and folded her hands across her chest. That is enough of this sort of talk. Since you three can only focus on imaginary fears, there is no point to this meeting. I will speak to Our Lady, and if she wishes it, I will find out what is wrong. Until then, I suggest you keep your imaginations in check. With that said, Zoe left the circle and walked towards Artemis's tent. She then touched the flap of the tent and promptly entered it, leaving the other 3 hunters gaping in shock. Inside the tent, Zoe nearly had a heart attack when she saw the sight in front of her. The proud and confident Artemis was sitting on her bed in the form of a 5-year-old. While that was younger than her usual form among the hunters, that was not what shocked Zoe. What was shocking was the fact that Artemis was wrapped up in several trophy furs, as if trying to hide and shivering in terror. Furthermore, she kept chanting in a terrified voice, "Only 8 years left, what am I going to do? Only 8 years left, what am I going to do?" For over a minute Zoe watched in shock as Artemis continued her panicked chant. Part of the hunter was shocked that her lady never broke the chant to recognize her rather unseemly intrusion. Artemis continued her chant on and on, lost to the world and her own worries. Zoe finally realized that she needed to do something, or her lady would just continue on in this state. She bowed her head and said, "Please forgive me, my lady, for what I'm about to do." Zoe then raised her hand and slapped Artemis across the cheek, unintentionally knocking the goddess off her bed and onto the floor. Luckily, the slap and sudden introduction to the floor snapped Artemis out of her nervous breakdown. The goddess's form quickly shifted from a 5-year-old to that of a 17-year-old. Artemis sighed and then smiled at Zoe as she sat back on her bed. "Thank you, Zoe, I needed that." Zoe bowed her head and then sat down on the tent floor. "I'd do anything to help you, my lady. What is it that has you so upset? If you wish to share this burden, I will do everything in my power to help ease it." Artemis sighed and then replied, "There's nothing you or anyone else can do to ease my problems, Zoe, although I'm touched by your wish. However, I suppose it would help me cope if I talked about my problems. The fact of the matter, Zoe, is that today is Naruto Uzumaki's 10th birthday. I only have 8 years left to get him to marry me, or I lose all of you." There was a soft thud on the floor as Zoe fainted from shock when she heard that news. It can be amazing how quickly people adjust to unique situations. For instance, Naruto started carrying around the kanabo his mother made him, and now no one questioned him about always having his luckily bat on hand. It did help Naruto's cover that he took up a passing interest in baseball, and that with a little chakra manipulation he could use the kanabo as a bat. A smirk was on Naruto's face as he walked onto the school's playground towards the baseball diamond with his kanabo balanced on his back. Ralphie was standing on pitcher's mound and called out to Naruto, "You're going down today, teacher's pet. Since you're the last here, you get stuck on Team Bookworm. Arnold's team captain for you guys, so go see him and grab a bench, because you won't be sitting down for long." Naruto quickly shot back as he headed to bench, "The only thing going down is whoever's downwind of you, garlic breath." He then quickly got to the bench and called out to Arnold, "So what's the game plan, buddy?" Arnold looked up and smiled at his best friend. "It's very simple, Naruto. We're mostly going to be batting in order of whoever grabbed a spot on the bench first. However, you're up if we either get 2 outs or 3 people on bases. Sorry for putting so much pressure on you, but you are the best player on the team." Naruto quickly took his spot at the end of the bench and shrugged. "It's no pressure whatsoever, Arnold. You're the captain, so you should do whatever you think is best for the team." Naruto watched as Dorothy stepped up to bat first. She got 2 strikes and then was able to get to first base. The next person on the lineup was able to hit the baseball on their second swing. The person after that hit the ball and was then tagged out. The game continued like this for a few minutes with everyone on Team Bookworm doing good enough that Arnold didn't need to call in Naruto. In all honesty, Naruto was happy that he wasn't needed at bat because something was setting his instincts on alert. Naruto's eyes scanned around trying to see what was wrong. No traps had been set on the field to hurt any of the students. Given the time of day, the nearby river spirit would be in his home watching Baywatch. There weren't any mysterious extra students stalking the game field. What was setting him on edge? After 3 minutes of scanning, Naruto finally found what was bothering him. A Stymphalian bird was flying in the sky, apparently separated from its flock. The slowly lowering amount of earth magic in the area must be causing the monsters to become confused. Perhaps the monsters' confusion was like a flock of birds that enter a powerful magnetic field? Naruto's eyes narrowed as he watched the Stymphalian bird slowly start to fly closer to the school. He needed to kill it, or it might attack someone in the town. But how was he supposed to do that while the buzzard was still in the air? He didn't have any arrows and all of his ninjutsu didn't have enough range. The Kanabo wasn't useful at the moment since its long-range attack wasn't charged up yet, and was way too overpowered for one Stymphalian bird. If only he could throw one of his exploding cards far enough to hit the monster. Suddenly an idea hit the half-blood ninja on how he could solve his problems. The first thing Naruto did, pull out a small piece of paper and trace a tiny seal on it. Then he adjusted his grip on the Kanabo, so that he could stick the paper with the seal to the Kanabo. Next, Naruto used the mist to hide his actions from everyone else. Finally, he used his limited genjutsu abilities to alter things on the baseball field. It wasn't anything major, as Naruto made it just hard enough for Carlos to find the ball so that Wanda could make it to first base. Arnold called out, "Okay Naruto, you're up now." Naruto then got up and started walking to the plate. Arnold then called out, "It would be great if you can get just one of the team home." Naruto turned to grin at his buddy and shot back, "How would you like a grand slam?" Ralphie heard Naruto's comment and snorted. "Getting a little full of yourself, aren't you, teacher's pet? No one in this school has ever gotten a grand slam. Trust me, as one of the few people to ever hit a home run, I can tell you that you are not getting a grand slam. You'll be lucky if you can even hit my curve ball." Naruto stepped onto the plate, took a quick glance at the Stymphalian bird, which was now above the roof of the bakery across the street at the end of the baseball field. He quickly calculated the trajectory and then offered a quick prayer to Artemis for a good aim. While Naruto Sirius doubted baseball was in her divine portfolio, he figured the fact that he was hunting a monster would mean she could help him out. Naruto then called out, "Bring it on, Raph." Ralphie quickly pulled back his arm and then threw the ball for all he was worth. The baseball flew through the air at an incredibly impressive speed for a 10-year-old. Naruto quickly glanced between the ball and the bird. When the time was right, Naruto hit the baseball dead on and transferred the explosive seal to the ball. The improvised explosive then soared out of the park towards its target, hitting the Stymphalian bird right in the center of mass. The monster's brain didn't have time to realize it had been hit before Seal detonated the monster. "What the heck?" Ralphie and everyone on the field yelled out in shock and disbelief. To their eyes, Naruto had hit the ball out of the park, across the street, and then hit some fireworks that the high schoolers had hidden on the bakery roof. Ralphie then turned to look at Naruto as he calmly walked along the bases while his team started to cheer. Team Bookworm's cheers grew louder and louder as each runner made it to home. Ralphie watched Naruto cross home and pick up his lucky bat again. The dumbfounded pitcher then muttered, "Is Naruto a god of baseball or something?" That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.